This is The Clash, where the real world clashes with a true Christian worldview. Join former professional wrestler Chris Whaley, known as the Masked Saint, who is an author, pastor, and teacher that brings his wrestling skills into the squared circle and tackles real-life issues. Along with Jeff Dixon, best-selling author, internationally known teacher, leader, and pastor who is not afraid to tackle the tough issues of the world we live in. Together they form a tag team of wisdom in The Clash.
Welcome once again to The Clash. I'm Jeff Dixon. I'm joined by
Chris Whaley.
And we are coming to you where we talk about a Christian worldview as it clashes into the culture around us. And I'm excited about what we're doing today, Chris, because most people understand that life can sometimes look like a wrestling match. And we're certainly not above comparing it to that.
Right.
But we have a guest today, a friend of yours.
Yep. If you like professional wrestling, even if you're just a novice and you're just getting into it, you don't want to miss this next interview with one of my professional wrestling friends. I guarantee you're going to love it.
Okay. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back after the break with the interview. Hi, Jeff Dixon. You might recognize me from The Clash, but that's not what I want to talk to you about. I want to invite you to visit a website. It's touchandchange.net. touchandchange.net. That is the website for the ministry of the church at 434, where I am the pastor. Chris Whaley is one of our pastors on staff. And so while you're familiar with us, you may not be familiar with some of the resources that we have to offer that we think will help you in your journey of faith. And you can find all sorts of stuff there with brand new programming that's released every night at 7 o'clock. And you can join us for worship live each and every Sunday morning at 9 or 11:15. Or you can watch streaming reruns of those worship services. And you can go back all the way back to when I had dark hair. And so we would love for you to come and join us and be a part of the journey of faith with us at the Church at 434 at touchandchange.net.
Well, we are blessed to have a very good friend of mine with us on The Clash, Richie Scruggs. And Richie, first, tell our audience how you and I met.
Well, it's funny, Chris, and I tell people all the time, I'm been wrestling pretty much my whole adult life and kept up with all the wrestling movies over the years. And of course, saw The Masked Saint several years ago and got to following you on social media without you knowing I was following, kind of like a stalker. But we were on a Singing at Sea cruise a couple of years back, and me and the wife was eating breakfast, and Brother Chris and his wife, Miss Vernon, was sitting a few tables away, and my wife, of course, had her back to him, and I told her, I said, I think that's The Masked Saint. And she said, The Masked Saint? And I said, yeah, the movie that we watched, The Masked Saint, Brother Chris Whaley. And she said, what would a wrestler be on a cruise ship like this for? And I said, hon, he's a pastor too. And she's like, I don't think that would be him. And I said, well, it may not be, but I'm going to take a chance. He's either going to look at me and say, brother, I don't have a clue who you're talking about, or he's going to say, I'm Mayor Giuliani, or I am Masked Saint Chris Whaley. And now, sure enough, I went up and said,
does he look better with or without the mask?
Well, brother, I'm going to plead the fifth on that because I wear masks a lot of times too. So, but anyways, I said, you wouldn't happen to be Chris Whaley, the Masked Saint, would you? And he's like, yes, I am. And man, I think that day we just became family.
Yeah, we did.
Spent a lot of time on the cruise ship together, and I have since been to your house and spent the night with my kids, my wife. You've been up and spent the weekends with us. You've preached at my church, and I mean, you're in Florida, and I'm in Shelby, North Carolina, and we've been to Tennessee together. And yeah. I mean, it's just like Lord put you in my path for a reason, and still today, even with what's going on with this show and with the WFC show, and it's just like God said, "Hey, I'm gonna set something up here for you, brother." And but that's how we met, and I'm telling you, it's like we've known each other forever.
Hey, I'm just thankful, Richie. I'll never forget. My wife and I were having lunch with Dr. Jimmy McDowell, who's like the AIWF champion, the Golden Boy, Jimmy McDowell. We were having lunch, and a little Asian guy came up to the table, and he looked, and he said, "Oh, excuse me, please, but are you?" And I thought he was going to say the masked saint, and he said, "Rudy Giuliani." So that one really hurt my feelings. So thank you for even mentioning that. So I had to bring that up.
Well, you got that fire department hat on, and you got your glasses on, and you could easily sign a few autographs either way.
Every once in a while, he makes us call him Mr. Mayor. So I don't know. That's all I know. Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Well, Richie, give us your story. How you came to know the Lord, how you got into professional wrestling. But before you begin, tell us a little bit about your family, and then tell us how you came to know the Lord and how you got into professional wrestling.
Yeah, well, just celebrated July 1st. Just celebrated 36 years of marriage to my wife Tammy. Tammy is a retired banker after 31 years at Fifth Third Bank. We have 2 adult children. Parker, or Jared Scruggs, just graduated with his PhD from Wharton School at UPenn. And then Kendall Scruggs is my director of operations. He runs our transportation business. And then 13 years ago, Lord saw fit for me and Tammy to adopt 2 little ones. Zoe is now 14 and JJ's 13. And they just keep us on our toes. We're on the second round of raising kids. I have people that'll call me every so often and say, "How's the grandbabies doing?" And talking about Zoe and Jay, of course, they're not my grandbabies, but my middle son, Kendall, and his wife have just told us that we are expecting our first grandchild in December.
Awesome.
We just found out we're going to have a little boy. So I'm going to be a pawpaw, and Tammy's going to be a mama. And I'm telling you, we're so excited about that. And I appreciate you asking about my family. And my wife actually she didn't save me. Of course, Lord Jesus Christ did that, but she was my inspiration. I grew up in church, grew up going to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. But I was one of those kids that sat on that back row, and would pass those notes around to the little girls that said, "Do you like me? Check yes or no." And that was my church growing up. I mean, I went to vacation Bible school, I went to youth camp, but I was always embarrassed to tell people this, but I cannot remember one of those pastors' names that I sat under all those years that I went to church. That's just, always had the head knowledge of Jesus Christ. But back in Valentine's weekend of 1988, Tammy, me and her were just dating at the time, went to a Valentine's banquet, had no clue that it was involved with the church, because it wasn't at a church. It was at a town hall. And long story short, it ended up being a preacher. It was a church function. Preacher came out, was directly in front of me, probably 10 feet from me, and shared a great message that night. And went home and I thought maybe I was sick. Maybe it was something I ate. I couldn't sleep. I was sweating and kept waking up. What it was, Chris and Pastor Jeff, is I was afraid if I fell asleep, I was going to go to hell. So I called Tammy late that night and asked her what time church started that next morning. And church started at 10. I was in the parking lot at 8 o'clock. Just could not sleep. I said, "Well, I'm up. I'm going to church." And got saved Valentine's weekend of 1988. My life's never been the same.
Wow, that's awesome.
I just knew there was something about Tammy.
Yeah.
The way she walked, the way she talked, the way she looked, the way she dressed, the way she acted. I wanted that in my life, and I never had that. And then come to find out, it's because she was a born-again Christian, and I wanted that same walk and that same talk, and that's how it came about.
Yeah. Tell us how you got into professional wrestling.
Well, that's the funny part, because growing up, I was always a smaller kid. I'm 6'4". I have been 6'4", 330 pounds. Now I'm down to about 250 pounds. But growing up, we grew up in the military. So Fort Benning, Georgia, we used to go to the Omni on Tuesday nights and sometimes Thursday nights and watch professional wrestling back in the Mr. Wrestling #2 days, and Pac Song and Tony Atlas and the Mighty Igor and Ivan Putski. And those were just some of my heroes growing up. And I can remember in school drawing all those guys supposed to be doing math or supposed to be doing language arts. And I was drawing wrestlers, and I was always getting in trouble for that. And I kept telling people, I said, "This is what I'm going to do when I grow up." And it's like, whatever. And sure enough, here it was, 1988, soon after I got married. The neighborhood we lived in, the Raging Bull, Manny Fernandez, who was a big star in WCW and Crockett Promotions, was my neighbor. And me and Manny ended up working out at the gym together. And Manny kept saying, "Richie, you need to get into wrestling." Wrestling was in my background. I've coached it for years. I did it growing up, freestyle and Greco-Roman. And So I started training with Manny back in 1989 in July the 4th. So I just celebrated 34 years in this business. I had to do the math there. Wrestlers don't think too much about math, but I've been hitting head so many times, I guess. But July 4th was 34 years in the business, because July 4th, 1990, I had my very first match against Ivan Koloff in Charlotte, North Carolina. American flag versus the Russian flag. I always grew up flat top, short haircut. Everybody pretty much knew me as a GI character, and it was just the perfect role for me. So that's how it started. American GI versus the Russian Bear, and the American GI character was born, and I'm still running that character today.
Now you mentioned Koloff. Now, name some other folks that you've wrestled against.
Oh my goodness! Coming up through the business, back in the day when I was training with the Italian Stallion and George South in the Professional Wrestling Federation in the Carolinas, and that federation had the likes of Matt and Jeff Hardy come through there, the Godwins, Men on a Mission, just to name a few. But I've tag teamed with some of the biggest names in the business. I've tag teamed with the Patriot, the late great Dale Wilkes. Wrestled against the men on a Mission. Of course, Ivan Koloff. Probably my greatest match, what I look back on, is the first time I ever wrestled Jimmy Snuka, Superfly Jimmy Snuka, in Wheeling, West Virginia, mid-90s. Got to the arena thinking I was going to be the great American GI, come out with my big flag. Well, Snuka's opponent didn't show up that night. And the promoter come to me and said, GI, would you mind being a bad guy tonight and wrestling Jimmy Snuka? Which I didn't even have to give that a second thought. And we probably had one of the greatest matches I've ever had, right there in front of several thousand people. And of course, sitting in the locker room, Jimmy Snuka's, passed away now, but sitting there in the locker room, Snuka said, brother, I just want the Superfly splash. And that was pretty much the match. We got out there and did our stuff, and I'm telling you guys, when he dropped me and I was laying on my back looking up at the lights and he climbed up on that top rope, it seemed like it took him forever to come flying off that top rope and land that splash. And, man, what a great moment. I was laying there listening to that 1, 2, 3 and just heard the crowd pop when he got the win. And wrestled quite a few guys in the business over the years. And, that's just one of my great memories, one of the best matches I had. Of course, Ivan. We took out American flag versus the Russian flag for the next 2 years during Desert Storm and Desert Shield. That was the main event on quite a few shows that we were on. We had the big American GI versus the big Russian, had his flag in the corner and my flag in the corner. And pretty much whoever got to their flag and broke it off the pole was the winner. And of course, Ivan always put me over. The 4th of July show, my first match with him, my very first match when I was in the locker room. Of course, the promoter and Ivan both said, hey, this is the 4th of July, freedom and, America. And there's no way that a Russian is going to beat an American on the 4th of July. And it just took off from there. Wow. That match was just such a great match. Like I said, Ivan's passed on. What a great Christian man, too. We formed a bond there over the years and stayed in touch. And, just some of my fond memories. I've wrestled, I don't know how many matches, wrestled all over the country. But those were some of the guys that I've worked, that I've looked up to, and just had the honor and the privilege of working against.
I was at an event a few weeks ago with a bunch of wrestlers. It was an autograph signing thing, pictures and stuff, and the one-man gang was there.
Oh, I worked, yeah. There's a match on YouTube with me and my tag team partner working Barbarian and One-Man Gang. And, what a great match that was, and what a great guy he is. Man, he was so, now he scared me. Yeah. He scared me. I'm 6'4". At this time, I'm probably 6'4", 270. Yeah. And we're in the back, and we're standing up against the One-Man Gang and the Barbarian, and me and my tag team partners, just looking at him, just shaking our head, and like, man, that's a lot of meat in that ring at one time. But that match is actually on YouTube. What a great match, though, and a great guy. Just a sweetheart of a guy. Big, just a nice all-around great guy. Most guys, Chris and Jeff, that I've ever ran into in this business we've become brothers. We really have. I stay in touch with them through social media. It's just, what a great business. You get out of it what you put into it.
I've become familiar with the wrestling culture, subculture through Chris, and we've had the opportunity to have some events here at the church and host and meet guys like you and get a chance to kind of get to know you guys a little bit. But I also know that not everybody in the locker room is the easiest guy to get along with or as much fun to get along with. So, who is the worst? You don't have to throw their name under the bus, but what's the worst match you ever had? Tell us about that.
Well, I was going to say real quick, I enjoyed being on those. We've been to your church a couple times and had a couple of events, but now the American GIs never wrestled at your church, but then AWOL's wrestled there a few times. And, but you were asking me about my worst match. I tell people this story all the time. I cannot remember the promoter's name, but I show up at the town. I know it was a Christian-based federation, and great card, great show. Jimmy Valiant was on the card. I think Barbarian. Jimmy Snuka might have been on that card, but they were putting me in the semi-main event against the mayor of this town. So, and he looked good. I mean, big, bulky guy. So I sat down with the mayor and I said, how long have you been in the business, sir? And he's like, I've been doing this 10 years. So I'm like, oh, this will be a great match. We'll be able to go. We'll be able to get all our stuff in. He'll take care of me. I'll take care of him. So by chance, I talked to the promoter, and it just comes up. I said, so the guy I'm working's been in the business 10 years. And he said, no, stop. He told you he's been in the business 10 years. And I said, yeah. And he's like, no, we've been doing this show 10 years. And he wrestles this one match every year. He doesn't train, doesn't wrestle. So this will be his 10th match.
Wow.
Oh, my goodness. So, of course, we get out there, and this guy has no clue. The match lasted 3 minutes. I just could not take that chance. He had no idea what he was doing. I could tell when I locked up with him, he was scared to death, just in panic mode. And but we got through it. 3 minutes later, he gets the 1, 2, 3 because he's the mayor of the town. But, yeah, that probably had to be it's so bad, guys, I don't remember what we did. I just knew I wanted to get out there, get it over with, and get home. So anytime you leave the ring and you come home, it's been a good night. So it was a good night, just an awful match. I don't even remember the guy's name. That's how bad it was.
Well, and you need to make sure the mayor wins so you can get out of town without the police stopping you, right? Is that how it works?
Sure, yeah. Now, I can tell you the scariest match I've ever had, and I tell people this story all the time, too. So me and my tag team partner back in the late 90s was wrestling in Cherokee, North Carolina. And we were actually wrestling at the Cherokee Indian Reservation. And we were main event. Of course, we were wrestling 2 Indians, 2 Cherokee guys. Had everything worked out. Main event started. We're right in the middle of our match. And this little kid comes walking across the floor while we're wrestling. And I just turn around and holler at him because I'm the bad guy. I said, hey, sit down while I'm trying to wrestle. Well, next thing I know, this guy looks like a bear. I'm talking, he's probably 7 foot tall, gets up and starts coming towards me. And all I said was, you don't want none of this Pocahontas. You don't want none of this Pocahontas. Chair started flying at us. The music stopped. The promoter comes out, screams at me and my tag team partner. They rush us back to the locker room and lock the door because everybody wants to kill us. So I get back there and I said, what's going on? And they said, that guy is the tribal chief of the Cherokee Indians. And I said, okay. And he's like, you called him Pocahontas. I cannot believe you called him Pocahontas. That's probably one of the worst things you could call him. Well, here I am. I'm apologizing. Well, this promoter just keeps berating us. And now, trust me, this wasn't a Christian-based show. It was just a regular show. So this promoter, he started cussing, just bad-mouthing me and my tag team partner. We were only just a few minutes into the match. Well, about 20 minutes later, everything calms down. They get all the chairs put back. They get everything set back up. And he said, I want you to go out there and I want y'all to finish this match, put my guys over, and we'll go home. And I said, yes, sir, we'll do that. So the whole time we were out there, we're wrestling, we're getting over or getting the crowd into it. Their guys get the 1, 2, 3. Everybody's leaving. Well, I see this Cherokee tribal chief get up and start to walk out. So me, just being a knucklehead, walked over to the mic, cut it on, and right when he gets to the door, I holler at him. I said, hey, Pocahontas, I'll see you next time. Well, here the whole crowd starts charging back. This is a true story. I'm in the locker room. They're waiting on the law to get there. I'm thinking the law is coming to escort us out of town. As soon as the law gets in there, the chief of the police says, sir, I need you to stand up, put your hands behind your back. And I said, do what? And he said, you're under arrest. And I said, under arrest? And they said, yeah, we're charging you with slander. And I said, and everything in Cherokee, guys, if you don't know, they're all Cherokee. All the police department, everybody that lives there, works there, are all part of the Cherokee Indian tribe. So they have me in handcuffs, and I tell my tag team partner to call my wife and tell her I'm going to jail they were charging me with slander, and I was going to spend the weekend in jail. Well, the chief could tell I was real nervous and I was upset and I was very apologetic. He said, here's what we're going to do. If you promise to never step foot back in my town, we'll drop the charges. And I said, sir, if you'll let me go, I'll never come back. And guys, this was 20 years ago. And I still don't get out in Cherokee and walk around because I'm afraid I'm going to run into that chief of police.
Oh, man.
And I'm going to go to jail. But that's a true story.
That's
that really
great. Wow.
I almost went to jail for calling somebody Pocahontas.
Wow. Wow. Oh, that's funny.
Oh, that's awesome.
Here's the thing. I mean, I know this from meeting you and being able to kind of bump into you while AWOL has been here. And in the ring, we'll certainly, talk with the crowd, work the crowd, and throw insults. You actually insulted my mom.
When you were here. I love your mom. She introduced herself to me.
And of course, after so when you're talking to her, you helping her understand it's part of the event in the evening and stuff. So you're the nicest guy in the world, but banned by the Cherokee Nation. I love it. That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
True story. True story. I'm telling you.
Hey, Richie, I wasn't in the business as long as you were. I was only in it for 10 years, and you've been in it for a long, long time. But I have people ask me this. I want to ask you, how has wrestling changed since you got into it back in 1990, and here it is in 2024? How do you think wrestling has changed with WWE, WCW, now AEW?
Well, Chris, when I was in the business, or when I started in the business, even when you were in the business, when I first started in the business, I started out with a company called South Atlantic. So back then it was South Atlantic, WCW, ECW, and WWF. That was it. If you didn't work for one of those federations, there really wasn't anybody else running. And then South Atlantic went under, sold out, and became NAWA, and I went to work for the PWF. Funny story there is I'm driving through town with my wife Sunday afternoon, and we drive by the Armory in Kings Mountain, North Carolina, and I look, and I told my wife, I said, I think that's the Italian Stallion in George South putting a banner up out there to the National Guard Army. And she said, what would they be doing in Kings Mountain? I said, I don't know, but I whipped the car around, went back, and they were hanging up a banner for the PWF that was going to be running in Kings Mountain. And I told them I'd love to come work for them. And that's how that journey started. I was with them for 7 years. But I said all that to say this. Back then, it was just ECW, WCW, WWF, and then PWF. That was the big shows here. But now everybody and their brother has a wrestling ring. Everybody has a promotion. We were on a card here a while back, and there was like 6 shows running within 40 miles of the town. And
wow.
There's no, if you want to wrestle, you tell somebody you're a wrestler, they'll put you on the card. Right. I mean, there are shows, everybody's got a ring, everybody's got their 3 letters they promote for their promotion, and that's what's changed. I mean, now it's like anybody and everybody can do it, and it shouldn't be that way. I mean, really, there's guys, and like I said, I don't want to bash anybody's, but I've been to shows where you can tell the guy in the ring's never had any training.
Right.
He just puts a few butts in the seats because he's the local, hero of that town. And like I said, there's a show on every corner, kind of like Dollar General. Wrestling is like Dollar General. There's every few miles, there's a wrestling ring and there's a promotion nowadays. Yeah. But that's how it's changed. Yeah. The camaraderie, the brotherhood, I think is still the same, especially with the guys that I run with and travel with.
Right.
But yeah, wrestling and Dollar General you could just about put a ring in a Dollar General parking lot, and there's a federation in that town.
Whenever I got started, if you were an independent, you were called a scab. And you would never work for one of the promotions. They used to have the territories, and if you were independent, you'd never work for a territory. There was just bad blood there. And then, when I got into wrestling, you had the good guy versus the bad guy, and your good guy usually won. And, you just got in the ring and worked. Now it is, I don't know, it's so different. It's just all high spots. And
It is.
and then the sexual innuendo that you see on some shows are just, it's not family friendly anymore.
It's not.
And I think there's just an air of darkness in some of the major promotions that you just didn't have whenever I got into wrestling. And of course, I was only in it for 10 years, but I think I enjoyed my 10 years a lot better than I would have enjoyed being in that kind of environment today. How about you?
Yeah, it's the same way. I feel the same way. And like I said, I'm not bashing anybody. To each his own. I know what I bring to the table. I know what my guys bring to the table. I stay busy. I mean, I could wrestle, I could wrestle somewhere every Friday, Saturday. There's shows that run on Sunday. I don't have a problem, as far as finding work, because there are so many out there. Right. But the great thing about it is I can pick and choose. And I don't like telling people that I don't want to work for them, but there are some out there that will call and say, is there any chance that you can come and work this show? And I just turn them down just because, like I said, I don't think the training's there like it used to be.
Right.
When I come through the business, Manny Fernandez and those guys, they beat me up 4 nights a week for 6 months. It was kind of like the Karate Kid movie when Daniel LaRusso asked Mr. Miyagi, when am I going to get to learn how to kick or punch? Well, that's the way it was with Manny. I was like, Manny, when am I going to get to learn some offense? And he said, when you learn how to take a beating. And that's the way it was. Guys knew how to do it. And that's why I feel comfortable now with a lot of guys I work with. I know they know what they're doing, and they know I know what I'm doing. Yeah. Kind of like the mayor incident. I don't ever want to get in the ring and the person. I don't want to make a person look bad.
Right.
I'm not. That's not me. When I get out there, I don't care how big the guy is. I've had promoters say, "Well, this guy's little, so don't give him a whole lot. Just go out there and squash him." He's in the business, and if I know he's been trained, I'm going to give him his. Rey Mysterio took down some of the biggest guys in the business over the years. So I don't let my size compared to the other person's size stop me. If the kid or older gentleman, whoever he is, knows what he's doing, we're going to have a good match. Right. We're going to have a good match. But there are some guys out there that I just won't get in the ring with. I've been doing this for 34 years and pretty much injury-free, just a few, shoulder incidents, broke a tailbone off a leg drop a couple times. But I want to be able to go home. I want to be able to be safe. I don't want to get hurt, and I don't want the other person to get hurt.
Right. I love hearing from our listeners. I have a website called themasksaint.com, and I get, people telling me things about the old wrestling days. I love to hear from them. I'm on Facebook, I'm on X, I'm on Instagram, and I just never get tired of listening to people. And if you have not read The Masked Saint, I have that available on my website. I have the Christmas book, Harold's Heavenly Christmas. I have the last book that I wrote with a wrestling buddy called Mr. President. Pictures whenever I was still in good shape. I have those available along with t-shirts, anything, but most of all, just love to hear from you. Hey, that was a great interview, but that's only the first part of the interview. So we want you to stay tuned next Monday night, and you'll see the second half of that interview with American GI, Richie Scruggs. And get on your seats, get ready, because on August the 17th, you're going to see professional wrestling on Abundant TV with Wrestling for Christ. We'll look forward to seeing you next Monday. Don't tap out.